So Jessica Pressler, you are a long-form and magazine journalist as well as a producer. You're known for your work exploring the crossroad of money and culture. Your reporting has appeared in the New York Times, Vanity Fair, GQ, Elle, and New York Magazine, where you spent more than a decade as a staff writer. In 2015, your story, The Hustlers at Scores, was nominated for the National Magazine Award and later inspired the film Hustlers. And then a few years later, your 2018 feature, How Anna Delvey Tricked New York Party People, became the basis for a Netflix series, Inventing Anna, created by Shonda Rhimes, a project on which you also served as a producer. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm very happy and honored to be here, especially among many distinguished colleagues. Is that too bright? So I was invited here today to speak to you about some of the challenges that, a little too close, that we face in journalism to do with facts and discerning truth from fiction and how that can be difficult. And to do that, I kind of want to start by talking a little bit about my background and how I became a person that people ask to speak about truth and fiction and liars and things like that. So we're going to do a brief history lesson here. I'm just going to tell you about my background. I arrived in New York City in 2007, which was a very interesting time for the city. In general, Wall Street was booming. There was, there's a lot of money in the city at this time. And New York Magazine had hired me to write kind of every day about the kind of culture of wealth and money that existed in the city at that time. Just to give you a sense of what was happening back then. So I was writing about that every day, and then fast forward kind of to 6 to 8 months after I started the job, the financial 2008 happened, and the banks, it turned out, had been engaged in all this fraudulent activity. It caused this crash, and suddenly I wasn't writing about the second Gilded Age, as people called it. I was writing about the Great Recession. And this was a really interesting time as well, because what happened after the crash is that there was it revealed this kind of wave of fraud that happened. Warren Buffett, who's this American investor who you may have heard of, he's very folksy, he has a lot of sayings. This is one of his famous quotes: when the tide goes out, that's when you discover who's been swimming naked. And in 2008, post-2008, it was, there were a lot of people that were revealed to have been swimming naked. Here we go, Bernie Madoff, he's kind of one of the most famous ones. He ran a $65 million Ponzi scheme. Raphael Follieri, he was one of my favorites. He was an Italian investor who claimed to have ties with the Vatican and was selling real estate. But he had no ties with the Vatican. He just took millions of dollars from people. He was dating Anne Hathaway. He lived in the Trump Tower. I think at one point I did a story about the Trump Tower because it was startling how many people lived there who had been convicted of securities fraud, which looking back, you're like, oh. Ken Starr, he was an accountant to the stars, if you can believe that such a thing existed. These are all people who kind of went to jail during that time. And, this is Ken Starr's wife, who is somebody that I wrote about as well. This is the mood of the crash. And so it turns out that New York really has this rich history of con artists and fraudsters. And this was sort of very startling to me and evident because all of these kind of venerated institutions that when I had arrived in the city, had appeared to be upstanding, and all these people who had appeared to have all of this money, who were donating to museums and getting out of their town cars and just being amazing, all turned out to be kind of not legitimate. Into my eyes, a very short time. It was like, that turned out to just be a lie. And that was kind of formative to me going forward. There's this Viktor Frankl. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Viktor Frankl. He is like one of the early New York City con men, and he sold the Eiffel Tower to people twice, despite not actually having possession of the Eiffel Tower. So this is like a classic New York City con man situation that, these stories are kind of endemic to New York City. And kind of going forward, they started to be the kind of stories that I wrote about because we had a lot of them. All right, so now we're after the crash. Let me see. I sort of realized that New York was like the epicenter of this, and that the flip side of being a destination for people who want to make it is that you get all these people who are so desperate to make money they'll do anything, including lie and cheat and steal. And I realize I'm kind of in this city full of liars and hustlers. And one of the stories that I wrote about kind of in that period also was the hustlers at Scores. It was a group of, do you say strippers here? I don't know. Exotic dancers who would get men drunk and steal their credit card numbers. And that was kind of a Wall Street story as well, because when Wall Street tanked, their business also suffered. They were kind of literally swimming naked. But then as time went on, this is the Hustlers movie, so yeah. As time went on, the economy recovered, and there was a new boom, which was kind of the startup boom in the early 2010s. Again, there was like a lot of money, and there was a whole new bubble, and then with that came this whole new class of kind of fraudulent, fake it till you make it kind of entrepreneurs. And that's when we come to Anna Delvey, who I think probably most people have heard of at this point, the fake German heiress who tried to buy a building on Park Avenue for $50 million to house her non-existent arts foundation. And that story came out at the same time as Elizabeth Holmes, who ran the blood testing startup Theranos, that was also found out to be fraudulent. And I don't know if you guys had the Fire Festival story here. It was a music festival that was a disaster. And it's Billy McFarland, who coincidentally lived with Anna Delvey at some point. It's a small world. They were all kind of similar stories, in that they were this kind of calamitous, really kind of ultimately silly frauds, where no one was hurt, although they could have been hurt. And the people who were mainly affected were wealthy investors. So it was a little bit of like a funny fraud. And it was also signified to me at like the popping of another bubble. In this case, it was kind of the private investor venture capital bubble that was behind all of these businesses that kind of ended like all of the money that these people were getting. And so the point that I'm trying to make, really, by bringing all of this history up, is that this is like a very cyclical thing. Let me just, sorry. Yeah, there is this cycle. It's like Warren Buffett pointed out. Wherever there's a lot of money, or the appearance of a lot of money, or in an industry like banking or crypto or AI, you can always find a lot of fraudulent activity, and that's a true thing. That will always be true. And in terms of the challenges kind of facing journalists, I mean, I think that we always have to deal with people who are lying. We always have to deal with frauds. They exist. They're endemic to the society. I'm really interested to see what other people have to say about kind of the tangible ways, the new ways that fraud is being done, and there are real things happening with AI and faking evidence and things like that. That's all stuff that we have to look out for. What I kind of think is a greater challenge at this point is that there's Anna Delvey. A greater challenge at this point that I think is the way that these narratives are treated. I mean, it's been very disturbing to me to see Anna Delvey kind of, here she is with George Santos, who is a congressman that was elected to New York, even though he had a fake resume. We've kind of elevated these people, and that's very disturbing, and I definitely have had, I guess, a part in that in some ways, inadvertently. People think that these people are kind of admirable, and they kind of weirdly are in a way, because who has the audacity to, stay in a hotel for a really long time and not pay for anything? Or the women in Hustlers were empathetic to me because they were kind of working against a system that wouldn't have them, and that's also true of Anna Delvey. There are these kind of admirable things, but it's kind of disturbing how that has really overwhelmed the narrative, and how these people have been elevated to like an extreme extent. I think like one of the challenges that journalists have to face is sort of writing that narrative. Like in America, some of us say we'd like politics to become boring again. And I kind of think that crime should become bad again. Like crime is stupid and ugly, and it shouldn't be glamorous. And so I think that is a really interesting challenge, to kind of write about these things in a way that makes that clear, but is still engaging to people and entertaining. So yeah, that's my hope, is that you guys will go forth into the world and find kind of ways to write the narrative, basically, to break through the noise and kind of be like, hey, wait a minute, this isn't cool. Yeah, so that's my hope. That's all.
Thank you. Jingle. Thank you, Jessica. I interrupted the jingle. Thank you. I think it's absolutely fascinating, and I want to jump into this just kind of little brick by little brick. So you describe this world of fraudsters who are kind of glamorous, a little bit sparkly or flashy. There's entertainment there that kind of sips into the narrative, whether we like it or not. How do you go about sourcing in that world? As if we go back to how you report about some of these stories step by step. Step one, how do you build your sourcing? Is there a kind of specificity to building sourcing within that kind of environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like any journalistic endeavor. I mean, I always think about, I don't know, do you have that children's story like about stone soup? Where it's like somebody needs to make soup, but all they have is a stone, so they go and borrow a carrot from someone, and then they go and borrow a piece of celery, and they go and borrow chicken, and eventually they have a soup. I kind of feel like that's what reporting is. You're getting a little bit over here, and a little bit over here, and a little bit over here, and you put it together, and eventually it starts to coalesce and make sense. People are not very forthcoming. I mean, it depends on what world we're talking about. The world of strippers is a different world than Wall Street. I mean, sort of. And yeah, so they're different people, but yeah, kind of different accounts, different pulling different kinds of paperwork, doing that kind of stone soup version of reporting, and checking everything against each other and things like that,
Are there types of bias that maybe pop up when you're doing that kind of reporting, or things that you think our students and junior reporters should be conscious of when they are looking to report about these kinds of really bubbly worlds? How do we check ourselves?
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely. The title of this talk, I don't know if I said that is everyone is lying to you. Everyone is lying to you all of the time, and people will absolutely. So you have to kind of be very skeptical of almost anything that anyone is saying. The other thing that, especially in like the economic and business worlds, is that people will really try to make you feel stupid. They'll make you feel like if you don't understand something, it's not because it doesn't make sense. It's because it's like your fault. But in fact, very often, things don't make sense because they don't make sense and they shouldn't exist. The other thing is, my main advice to journalism students is always, if someone says to you on the phone, this is not a story, like go do something better with your life, then it is absolutely a story. Like that is the ultimate sign that you are on the right track. So yeah, I think that, people don't want to talk to you if you're doing a story that is good.
That's a good sign. People hang up in your face. You should
People
take
have
that as
hung up in my face.
encouragement.
Yes, that is encouraging. Yeah.
I agree with that. Do you think that separating fact from fiction is perhaps one of the biggest opportunities for young journalists today who want to make a name for themselves? You talked earlier, about how everyone's lying, how fraud is this kind of cyclical thing that keeps coming back to the front stage. Do you think that that's something that young journalists should invest time in and really think about how to make a difference in uncovering fact from fiction to make a name for themselves?
Definitely, definitely. I think that definitely parsing, yes, the kind of, I guess there can be these narratives that overtake situations, and there's always kind of something more behind them. There's always more to look at, and there's always more nuance in a lot of situations. So yeah, definitely, figuring out ways to tell the truth in a way that is clear and, not entertaining, but understandable and appealing is major at this point. Nobody really, unfortunately, people have just become so inured to bad news. Nobody really wants to read a bunch of dry facts. I do think that you have to tell a story in the best way that you can. So that is, I think, a really useful. I think storytelling is more important than ever in a way to kind of figure out how to share these facts in a way that engages people.
And how do you draw the line, between storytelling and what becomes, and storytelling as a part of journalism, and what could become then entertainment? I mean, I discovered your work. I have to admit, like a lot of people, through your fictional character, as portrayed in a Netflix series, which is, But then, of course, looked into what you were doing as a journalist, and it does seem like more and more the line between, just journalism and entertainment is becoming a little bit harder to grasp, especially with social media format, etc. How do you draw the line? When do you know you've gone too far, and when do you know that you're still standing your ground as a journalist?
Yeah, the amount of people who refer to Inventing Anna as a documentary is incredibly disturbing to me. It's not. It's a fictionalized portrait of events. And that's a really, there is a line, right? I do journalism, and the TV show is a TV show that has factual elements. It's really tricky to talk about this because I do feel like as a long-form magazine journalist, the storytelling is such a bigger part of it than somebody who's doing kind of hard news day to day. It sounds different and it looks different. It's important, I think, at the end of the day, that the basic tenets are there, that it's factual, that what I'm writing is nonfiction, and clearly marked as such. But it's not really a line for me to draw, if that makes sense. I think that people need to understand what a documentary is and what a TV show is. There's not much I can do about that, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, people need to get educated as well about what it all means. I want to go to the room, give people a chance to ask questions as well. If someone in the audience has a question for Jessica Pressler, if you can raise your hand, and we'll try to get a mic to you. Any raised hands?
No questions.
No raised hands. If not, I have further questions. Oh yeah, we have a raised hand there.
Thank you. Hello, thank you for your talk. It was very interesting. I was wondering, until you have a great discovery in your research, do your colleagues, or have you ever experienced that people do not take you seriously as in your journalistic work, and degrading it as gossip, while there is actually some very big value behind it?
Yeah, I feel like not being taken seriously is a big part of being a journalist, and it is discouraging and uncomfortable. So much of journalism for me is awkwardness too, is just going into situations where you feel very awkward and kind of pushing past that awkwardness, pushing past those people that kind of make you feel like you're dumb for asking questions. It's so that is the thing, and it's very hard to live with that kind of discomfort of not feeling always you know what you're doing. Like, I think part of the whole thing is that, like, you don't know, and you're trying to find out. Like, that's the job, is like, you don't actually know, you're trying to understand. And existing in that space can be very uncomfortable. And I think that people don't really talk about that enough. And people, journalists especially, I think they like to act like they know what they're doing all the time, but they don't. Like, and that's kind of the whole thing. Like, that's really the job, is that you are getting the information. So you are coming from like a place of a little bit of ignorance, and that's okay. So yeah. That's my pep talk. That's my motivational speech for today.
Thank you, Francie, for your question. Any other questions in the room? Yeah, we've got two. Whoever gets a mic first gets to ask the last question. Sorry.
Hi, thank you very much for your talk. You said that fraud and crime shouldn't be glamorous, but obviously they are. If I can ask you a bit of a predictive question, you outlined this kind of timeline of waves of high-profile fraud. What do you think is the next big thing for fraud? Can you give us an anecdote of something you recently worked on? And is reporting on it more difficult or easier than it was back in the day?
Well, it's definitely AI right now, right? I mean, there's AI companies that, you know, what does it even mean? What does powered by AI even mean? There's so much fraud in that world. For me, I've kind of stopped writing. This was not the only thing I wrote about ever. This just happens to be the best known stuff. But I've almost stopped writing about these kinds of stories because it is so the same to me. Like, it's like the same play with different actors. Like, every one of these waves, it's like the crypto thing. Oh, it's like this kind of I've seen this exact thing before, and so it's very like kind of. It's almost boring after a while, like for me, like, and so like, I guess that's like kind of weirdly comforting in a way, that there is this like human tendency to like just do the same thing over and over again, even if it's a different industry. So it's like, yeah, there will always be liars. They will always find a way, and they will always get caught because they're not that smart. Like, they're actually not, like, I mean, the huge kind of weird misconceptions is like, oh my God, these people are masterminds. This person, she's still there, she's not there. But Anna Delvey, not a mastermind. She got caught like really fast, right away, went to jail. I mean, these people are not masterminds. Like, they got, you know about them because they got caught and they're bad at their fraud. So yeah, so it's not glamorous. And that's kind of what I was saying, is that I think that, I remember, you guys probably aren't familiar with Liar's Poker. Michael Lewis, he wrote this book in the 90s about Wall Street. And he meant it to be sort of an indictment of the culture of Wall Street. And instead, it became like a playbook for people who wanted to work on Wall Street. And it became like, and he was horrified. So I do think that like the challenge is writing about these things in a way that doesn't glamorize it. And I don't really know how you do that, because we are writing this. When I wrote about Anna Delvey, I was like, this is insane. And people are like, wow, that's so cool. And it doesn't generally track for me. So there is like an opportunity there to, you know, kind of, I said, like, write this narrative about like how we're thinking about these things, because it is all wrong in a way.
Jessica, thank you so much, Jessica Pressler, for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you.